romance just speaks to me in terms of that banter and spark and happy endings, and that just, it makes me happy. It just makes me happy.
Welcome to Steam Scenes, the podcast about... Wait, hold on. Sure, sex is, well, sexy, but it's also sassy, and it's silly, and it's fun. Hi, I'm El Greco, and I write steamy romance. On my podcast, Steam Scenes, I'm joined by my fellow romance authors for some explosive, see what I did there? Conversations on writing all the naughty bits. Sit back, relax, and join us for some scintillating conversation on Steam Scenes. I am crazy stoked to introduce Sara Whitney to the podcast. Sara writes sassy contemporary romance that's always sunny with a chance to sizzle. She's an RWA Golden Heart Award finalist and worked as a print journalist and film critic before she earned her PhD, landing in academia. She's a good pinball player, me too, and an expert at shouting TV opinions to anyone who will listen. We're going to talk about that. In a funny twist of fate, Sarah is married to a divorce attorney, and she likes to think that her happily ever afters keep their household in balance. She and her husband live in the Midwest, surrounded by books, cats, and half-empty coffee cups. Sarah, I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much.
I don't mean to one-up you, but I think I'm more excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me on.
Totally, just keep going. So I'm like, totally, I love that you are like a TV/film critic, and I think that's so cool because I have another podcast about Melrose Place. So the best worst show of the 90s. And we just
look, Melrose Place, when we didn't have the internet, got away with twists that nobody saw coming, nobody heard. I mean, you cannot recreate that in today's climate, and I applaud Melrose Place for always keeping everybody just flabbergasted every week.
It's really funny to rewatch it, 20 odd years later, and in like succession, and sort of like so quickly, and then not having that sort of long break between seasons and be like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, I'm somebody who didn't watch The West Wing when it was on originally. And so when I started watching it on Netflix, a friend of mine was just like, you don't know how we suffered in between seasons with no idea how this cliffhanger was resolved. So yeah, the experience is so different to just, you don't have the week or the 3 months over the summer. And I'm grateful for the binge model, but kids today will never understand. They'll never understand.
And writers decide they're going to throw away the old series Bible. And it's just like, whoa, what's going on? No, they will never understand. So, hey, we're not here to talk about TV. We're here to talk about sex.
Yes, we are.
Okay. When did you realize that you wanted to become a writer?
Well, I'm a very praise-driven person, and in 7th grade, when Mrs. Lutonen said on a paper she had graded and given back, "You are such a good writer. You have such a good storytelling voice," I thought, oh, people like that I do this? I can do this. So 7th grade teacher, the praise and the feedback from her really is what kind of made me think, oh, well, maybe this is something I actually could consider. So in college, I majored in journalism because that was a little more practical. That's a career people put out one ads, or they did then, for journalists.
Not anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, journalism for career stability.
Yeah. Well, and of course, my day job today is I'm a professor of journalism, so it's still going to be there. It's just we might be using different platforms, but the techniques remain. But as I was, I graduated, I got a journalism job in a newspaper. That's where I did my movie criticism, moved into academia, and, you get your PhD, you get a job, you work toward tenure, you get tenure. And once you have tenure, that's when I had a little bit more freedom to look around and say, where am I not fulfilled? Where am I not creatively or technically, where are my skills atrophying? And I thought, well, I do all this kind of writing, this information-driven, data-driven, research-driven writing, and it's important and it's good and it's challenging, but there was a part of me that just wasn't being fed. And so around the same time was the rise of Kindle Unlimited, well, not Kindle Unlimited, but e-readers and Kindle, and the online publishing platforms that allowed a lot of voices to suddenly become available to purchase and to read. And there was just this influx of romance that I had never seen before, and different stories and different voices and different people telling them. And I thought, I could do that too. And some of it was so inspirational, and some of it was like, oh, I could definitely do that. So it just I had the free time in my schedule, and all of a sudden there was this path forward to presenting work to people in a way that I thought, I should try this. And I assume I'm not the only writer who thought, oh, I can do this, and did a first draft and realized, oh no, I really can't do this. I have so much to learn. I have so many people I need to consult with, and seminars and workshops and books of advice for writers. And so then you learn and you level up, and then you realize, wait, okay, I've got the books, and now I have to figure out the marketing angle. And so it has just been one long climb, and it's been so rewarding to do something so different, and to get to break free of the day-to-day job, and to do this wildly satisfying, endlessly creative pursuit.
So have you always been a romance reader? Like, what drew you to the genre to write it instead of, say, thriller or something like that?
Sure. So I think I'm probably going to give you an answer that you're going to hear from a lot of people when you ask this question, which is, romance is optimistic. It is a genre that privileges the stories of women and the voices of women, the talents of women, and not all women, of course. I love how diverse the romance field has gotten, but that is, it's just the only genre where you have the freedom to explore emotions and feelings and sex and all these things in ways that aren't squishy or dismissed or an afterthought or shoehorned in. I have read really widely in other genres, science fiction and fantasy, popular fiction, mystery, and I love them. And there's a lot of wonderful books out there, but romance just speaks to me in terms of that banter and spark and happy endings, and that just, it makes me happy. It just makes me happy. I swear to you, I'm like my Game of Thrones people. I was burned too many times by popular fiction that killed one of the couples in a pairing, and so I turned into Arya Stark with her list of people to kill. You've got Joffrey, Cersei, Walder Frey, One Day by David Nichols, The Imperfectionist by Tom Rockman. All these books that kind of turned on a dime and gave me a really unhappy ending. Who's got time for that? Who's got time to invest in these people you love? Romance gives you the good feelings, and it gives you the emotional catharsis. I've been married for 5 billion years, and so it's really fun for me also to read that first meet, first kiss, first brush of the hands, first sex, first fight. It's this emotional roller coaster that I get to experience it along with these characters who I'm just so enjoying traveling with. So a lot of I don't think I'm unique in that. I think a lot of romance readers are the same way, but just the happy, the squishy happy. That's what I love.
Do you happen to remember, I'm sorry, I'm throwing you a bit of a curveball here. Do you happen to remember the first romance book you ever read?
So I have 3 different answers for that. I feel like there are 3 different waves. When I was a 6th grader in band camp, yes.
Love it.
I walked across the street to the drugstore across from the campus where band camp was being held, and bought a book off the rack, a romance novel. And I remember reading it and thinking, this is really good. I really like this. I thought these were trash. Yeah. How good? Why is this so good? And it's so fascinating to me in retrospect that as a 13-year-old, I was trained to think these books are disposable, right? These books are not quality. And so I loved it. I have to this day, I don't know I cannot remember what the book is. I've tried to piece together what year it would have been, what month, what was out, what would have been a drugstore. It was American Revolution, and she was an American who was considered to be a spy, and her love interest was in charge of executing her, so he loaded blanks into the rifles.
This kind of sounds good.
I know, right? And when they fired, she passed out from shock, thinking she was going to be dead, and so he smuggled her body away. This is all I remember. If anybody out there knows what this book is, please tell me.
Please tell me too. This sounds like something I'd really like to read.
I would just love to see, but it just the emotions and the story and the epic sweep of the history, all of it just carried me away, and I was so shocked at how much I enjoyed it. But I didn't, a kid in junior high isn't going to necessarily be able to seek out, and I became an infrequent reader. And then when I was getting my PhD, Julia Quinn got me through my grad program.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, when I was at a conference, an academic convention in Kansas City, there was not much else to do, and so I wandered down to the gift shop in the lobby. So it's kind of the same way I found it at band camp, right? Boy, this is a deeply nerdy band camp academic conference. But you're stuck in a hotel in Kansas City at this academic conference, and what's in the gift shop are the paperback,
Right.
those kinds of books. And so I do know this one. It was Stealing the Bride by Elizabeth Boyle. It looked good. I picked it up and it was just fabulous. And so I just kind of went from there and I found Julia Quinn and she's so light and so quippy and witty and I never looked back. It was all over for me then.
Okay, I can see the influence in your writing as you're sort of saying that. That's sort of like light and witty and so much fun.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so okay, we're here to talk about sex, so let's talk about sex. Everyone
Okay.
wants to talk about sex. I'm curious to you, what do you think makes a sex scene good?
Oh, it's so different for everybody, but for me, I love a sex scene that feels true to the characters. I love a sex scene that you couldn't cut and paste and put into a different book or with different people because of the dynamic and the characters and the way they communicate and the way they interact. And I think for me the biggest thing is the vulnerability, right?
Right.
No matter what the circumstance of the sex is, and there are so many different circumstances. It's why I love romance because you get these varieties of, that tentative first time or the passionate can't stop myself anymore. We have to act on this feeling or the angry or the makeup or all of those. There's always vulnerability. There's always somebody is revealing something or desperately trying not to reveal something. And I think that's so lovely and powerful to watch something be exposed or something be like, I can't let her know how much this actually means. And I adore that. Anytime there's a surprise, anytime a character, a mild-mannered character, uh, acts out of character in his or her daily life in a situation like that, I just love it. What doesn't work for me, and this is just a me personal thing, I cannot for the life of me write dirty talk. I cannot. And
You are not the first one to say this. That seems to be kind of like this.
it it must be it must
Yeah.
be talent that few possess and many covet because when dirty talk is done well in the books that I read, I'm just like, oh, how did you do that? Because for me, it turns pretty quickly on a dime and dirty talk can get kind of silly in some settings. I think it can get a lot of growly and a lot of, I don't know. So that's one thing that doesn't work for me, and it's actually a challenge I've tried to set for myself in a future book. Can I do that? Can I write that? I don't know that I can, but I'll certainly try.
Is there, I mean, again, not to put you on the spot, is there a book or an author that you felt like did that dirty talk really well? Because I'm very curious, because you're right, it can sound so ludicrous. It can sound ludicrous if you're doing it with your partner, Frank.
Yeah. That's the thing. I don't want to be embarrassed reading a love scene. And I don't mean prudishly. I mean like, oh my God, do humans actually say that to each other? Like, is that if my partner said that, and it's hard to know in the moment, and every couple has a different dynamic, but I'm not sure I'd like that. Hmm. Um, I'd say maybe Christina Lauren. I love her books. I'm a lot of the things I'll probably talk about is going to pivot to contemporary romance because that's what I write, and that's a lot of what I read now. But I do think Christina Lauren does a beautiful player, has a great dirty talking hero, a beautiful stranger, Max. So yeah, I think that she does. They do. It's a pair writing. They do really great stuff.
I am so taking notes on
Well,
that.
I can send you a whole list after this. One thing I will not do in a sex scene if I can help it, I really don't like the word panties. Ugh. I just don't, and my sister loathes it. And since she is one of my main readers, I think you'll find that word in maybe one of my books and not in a sexual way, just in a kind of funny toss off comedy way. But it's just little things like that it is a word that for me takes me out of a scene. And if other writers have it in, of course it's fine. It's their writing, it's their characters, and it won't completely jar me. But if I'm reading my stuff, that would just throw me out because it's not a word I would use. So
I do it with panties. Yeah, yeah. It's a hard word because I'll use it, and I slightly cringe at it.
a lot of other, if you read my books, you'll notice I'm either saying like lace or satin and I'm describing actual
Right.
material, or I'll say underwear sometimes, but underwear is so like, pull up your big girl underwear. So it is hard.
Okay, so what was it like when you sat down to write your very first sex scene?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this. And I barely remember. What I did was went back on my computer and found the oldest draft of my first book that I could find.
Oh, wow.
And it's from 2015. And I know I was working on it. That was a polished draft. So I had to have been working on it for 2013, 2014. So it's been, 6, 7 years. I remember being like, oh God, some other human is going to read this. And I had to remind myself, people are going to understand this is not me writing me, right? This is me writing this character and this
Right.
character. And so understanding that audiences are going to separate, because I do think there can be kind of there's a sort of gross tendency for people who don't understand the genre to
Mhm.
say to a writer, oh, you do a lot of research with your husband. That like,
Yeah, yep, that creep factor. Yeah.
maybe so, maybe not. It's not your business, first of all. And second of all, don't you wouldn't say that to a mystery author. "Oh, do a lot of murders with your cohort in crime there, right?" Like, no, nobody does that. So give romance writers the courtesy of understanding that we have curiosity, imagination, and the ability to create scenes. So I had to remind myself of all of that when I gave it to the first person to read, just to be like, here you go. I think the first ones were fairly perfunctory. I think they were pretty fast. It was a little this movement, this movement, this movement. And then the more I deepened my understanding of what readers want from that experience, I deepened the emotions of each character and tried to give more meaning to the actions or slow down a scene so they could take stock and or change. That is the first sex scene I wrote actually ended up being in book 3, just how the series shook out. And so that was one that they had been, it's a slow burn romance, and they had been waiting so long. And so it was frantic, frantic, frantic. And then I had this moment where they both kind of stop and realize this is happening. This is us and we are in it. This is serious and we're going to move forward now. And I love the way I was able to switch them from gotta have you, close off to it's you and me, look me in my eyes, and this is how we're going to do it. So I think the first scene it evolved a lot from
Mm.
that sort of perfunctory tab A slot B
Right.
to actually progressing the relationship from where they were in the previous chapter to where they end up at the end of that one. And what's really interesting is when I looked at that draft from 2015 and I compare it to the book that I published in March, which is when that book came out, so much is different. It's probably 70% new content. I changed characters, I dropped entire chapters, I changed plots. The sex scenes from 2015 to what was published are almost identical.
Really.
So once I polished those scenes in that early draft, they were really unchanged. And that I thought was just kind of a fascinating. Either I had that figured out early on, or I am still growing and learning and have areas to explore there as well. But I just thought it was so my dialogue and fully dressed scenes were so different. But boy, those sex scenes just were consistent.
That's really pretty fascinating because I'm sort of curious about your process. So like to go through, because I know sometimes when I'm writing them, particularly because like the first one that I wrote wasn't even for a romance, it was in an urban fantasy. And it just
One
sort
of
of
my favorite sex scenes is from an urban fantasy.
really.
So yeah.
That makes me feel good. So it's from one of my urban fantasies, and I was sort of like I had to like stop and kind of like look when I looked at it, and I was like going over in my head like what would this be like, and I was like, oh my god, this guy's an octopus, like this is impossible. Yeah. So there's a point now where I write very sort of like, a
Mhm.
this just that, so that I'm moving out the choreography and then going in and layering into it the emotions, the sensations, the senses. And so I'm kind of curious, what is your process?
So what I've found for myself is I actually one of the first things I know when I'm brainstorming a new book is their first sex scene. So
Really?
that's something I write really early on. I
Wow.
don't know if other people do it that way, but I'm not a plotter, definitely not. So what I need to get started in a book is I need to know who are my characters, what are their goals, motivations, fears, how do they meet, what's that conflict that sets them on a path together, and then what is their first sex scene going to be like? Where is it? What is happening? Where are their emotions? And typically then the final fight. Those are the things I need to know to launch into a book. And then from there, I can wander around that garden, plucking, pruning, trimming, sometimes having to, put a burn pile in and start over. But yeah, when I look ahead to book 5, I know how they meet. I know what their first sex scene is going to be. I still don't know their final fight yet, but I have a good sense of that. So I I know what that needs to bring about in terms of change. So I start with the emotion. I start with the, is it a fight? Is it a finally giving in? Is it a dare? Is it, what is it that gets them to this point? And then I don't quite know at that point where they're physically, where are they going to be located? What are they wearing? So a lot of times I'll have to have like a remove whatever they're wearing and then notes, because I don't know. Are they coming from a fancy dinner party? Have they been hanging out on the couch all day? That kind of thing isn't clear yet to me in the path of my story. But I do know book 5 that I'm working on, I should be working on any day now. I'm going to start working on book 5. That is a second chance romance. And so their first sex, I know, is going to be an angry, I don't want this as much as I do, but we both have to do this so we can move on. Like we parted badly. We're suddenly in each other's orbit again, and I have to get this out of my system. And so it's going to be angry, but it's going to turn unexpectedly, like we both are remembering, and we both remember how important we were to each other. And God damn it, I hate this. So, I hate that I
this
still
sounds
feel this.
good.
I hope it's gonna be. I have such high expectations. So I know that that's the emotional beat I want to hit. So I don't yet know exactly how. I know positions and I know some of the dialogue, but I have a lot to fill in. Does that kind of?
Yeah, it does. I mean, actually, that's sort of, I honestly, that sounds so good. That sounds so good. Um,
I'm working on a book. I heard you say pinball also. I'm totally working on a book that involves first sex on a pinball machine or around a pinball. Yeah. Uh-huh.
don't break the pinball machine. Those
Oh
are
no, yeah.
expensive. Those
Oh,
are
I know.
expensive to fix.
That's actually hilarious because that is what I'm planning for. That is, what do you think you're doing? Oh God, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted this. No, I do. But do you want to break this machine? Go to the bedroom, idiot. Like that's 100% the attitude there.
Those who play pinball know. Yeah, probably not the best place to have sex because it might break. They're so fragile.
I mean, those legs are really spindly and it's a glass top. And if you nudge something, everything could just, like, you're going to
Everything
lose
goes.
the ball. And
Yeah.
there's so many double entendres and single entendres in that too. Like, it's good stuff.
I love it. Oh my God, I can't wait to read that. I can't wait to read that. Okay, so we have so Tempting Lies is
Mhm.
your next book to come out on September 28th. This
September
will
28th.
probably go out right before your pub date. Tell me about it. Set the book up for us.
So this is a book 4 in the Tempt Me series, and both of these characters, Thea is the heroine and Aiden is the hero, were introduced in book 3. And this is the first time I've had both characters in the previous book. I always introduce at least one, in the previous to spin off. But in this case, both of them are supporting characters from book 3 who I created to serve the main love story of book 3. And so I was sort of locked into who are these people, as they were sort of foils or objects of jealousy for the main character in 3, and then to take these two and turn them into their own people and their own characters worthy of love and able to come together was a really fun challenge. But Tempting Lies is a fake relationship book with a reformed player who cannot escape his past. He cannot escape that reputation of player, but he needs to for professional reasons. And so he turns to his former childhood friend and proposes a fake relationship. Can you make me look domesticated so I can stop scaring away clients at my father's business, essentially? But he's a carpenter. His father founded a construction business in town, and needs to take it over because his father's having health issues. But he finds that the clients are not crazy about having somebody who, loved and left their daughter 5 years ago at the helm. And so then his childhood friend has a property that her dream house is for sale. She desperately wants to buy it, but she can't afford the renovations. Well, what if we strike a deal? What if Aiden does the renovations on the cheap, and in exchange, Thea comes along, holds his hand, and makes it look like he's no longer the wild guy? And he's not. He's stopped his sleeping around, but it's hard to convince a town who kind of knows you as that legendary, like, oh,
Right.
Aiden's the guy. He's the good time guy. So that's the story. So I love me some tropes. I love me a fake relationship. I love me a girl next door. I love me a reform player who's baffled that he's catching feelings. Ugh, there's nothing finer. So that's the setup for this book, and these two were incredibly fun. This probably is the easiest book I've written so far. It just kind
Really?
of flowed, which is I was talking to a couple author friends of mine who've been in the business for longer and said, book four it just came really easily. Have I figured it out? Have I cracked the code? And they all just laughed and laughed. Oh, no, no, no. Some books are
Just
just gifts and others take a little more effort, and this one was a gift.
enjoy it for what it is. Yes.
But this one is full of all this longing of God, he's so cool. I didn't know I'd enjoy this so much, but this is just a relationship. We have an agreement in place. I can't overstep those bounds. So I love the deprival and the longing on both sides, but both of them assuming that the other one is just playing that role. And it's the title of the book is Tempting Lies. So they're lying to the public, but I think they also lie to themselves a lot about I'm not worthy of him, I'm not worthy of her. These are what we agreed to, and I can't break those rules. So it's just they have to come clean with each other, and it's a romance, so they do. But how they get there, I think, is
Spoiler alert, they do. They do. Well, it struck me, and I'm going to be reading some excerpts that we can talk about. Was I love the humor. The humor just got me, and it was like, and not only the humor, because obviously there are romances that are humorous, but the humor within the actual deed itself was kind of perfect
good.
because sex is great, sex is beautiful, sex is romantic, sex is feeling, sex is passion, sex is funny.
Mhm.
Sex is funny. We make funny noises. We do like it,
I can
and you,
tell, like my hip is locking up. Can we, like,
yeah,
it's if you don't have that kind of relationship with a partner, and a lot of people don't, then that's fine. Like if you're, well, I shouldn't say that. I feel like you should be able to say to your partner, oh no, wait.
yeah.
That tickles, stop it.
So I just want to read this quick little bit here, okay? We are, by the way, in Aiden's head at this point in the story. So, my God, killer. He tore his eyes away from the beauty sprawled in front of him, long enough to rip open the condom and slide it on with clumsy fingers. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this rushed, this raw and eager. When he stretched over her body, her hands gripped his shoulders. Okay, look, this got, like, right here. I was like, oh, I love it. He's clumsy. He's a clumsy lover. He is like kind of like literally feeling his way around doing this thing, and his hands aren't cooperating and they're not doing what he wants them to do. He is not being suave, like, at all. And I loved this. It made him so human.
And that's, what I said earlier about the vulnerability, because he has this reputation. Women line up to go home with him at the end of the night, on a Saturday at a bar. And for him to finally say, this woman I've been pretending to be with all these weeks, I feel things for her, and it is just short-circuiting my game. And I adore that. I adore that he just can't quite get it together to be. He knows that he has a reputation, and he knows what she's expecting. He knows she's heard all the stories. And so I just love that he can't help but fumble because he's so overwrought by everything, overwhelmed by everything that's happening.
It's really, okay, because we're going to dig into this now. Aiden was starting to feel like she'd fucked all the smarts out of him because he had no idea why she was upset. He slid across the mattress to sit on the edge of the bed in front of her, which put them almost at eye level. He reached out and rested his hands on her hips, giving her plenty of chance to back away. She stayed put, but she also stayed tense, so he spoke gently. I'm sex dumb right now, so talk slowly to me. What's going on here? Don't kick me out because I got off too fast. I was dying. I was dying because, again, like, he's supposed to be this player. He is supposed to be this sort of stud, like every, and he just was frankly a horrible lay. Like, he just couldn't control himself, and he was just like, boom, it's over. And she was kind of like, okay. Like, it was really, really, that those moments were really great. And it was sort of like reading him. It was almost like that sort of 16-year-old kid that never had sex before, and now
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden he's got this. But he's not the 16-year-old kid with zero experience. He's like the player of the town,
Uh-huh.
which was
And
great.
and I in some ways I like to think that he kind of was though because it is so different with her because he
Right,
has been spending so much time with her and he really likes her and he'd like to keep seeing her again and that's such a new experience for him that it all did make I mean if I may quote the philosopher Madonna like a virgin touched for the very first time, right? Like it is his first time in some ways because it's his first time with someone he actually kind of sort of loves, even though it's going to be hard for him to say that word, right?
right,
It's going to be
right,
hard for him to get to that realization. But I just, yeah, and he knows that it's actually really, it's not it's a compliment, right? Like
right.
he was so overwhelmed by her that it's a credit to his feelings, but she doesn't know that. All she knows is he's just like, this is the guy everybody this? Oh, it must be me. And so
Yeah,
poor Thea.
yeah. So Thea's got her own sort of inner monologue going on that we see a little bit later that was like, it must be me. Like I'm not attractive enough. I'm not, he just likes to have sex, so he's just having sex and it's very profound. And so it must be me. And she feels something for him. And so they both kind of are in these places together, and sort of almost in the same place together, where he's like, "Oh shit," and she's like, "Oh shit," and they need to sort of like sort it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the build up with her character, I feel like I've talked a little bit more about him than her, but he has never expressed any interest in her as he's worked his way through all the women in town. She was the girl next door, and so he's always kind of thought of her like that. And she knows he usually chooses slightly more, glamorous stacked hotties. And she knows that, she's pretty. She knows that she's attractive, but she knows also that the kind of woman he takes home is not her style of beauty. And so that's why all along she's thinking nobody's even going to buy us as a fake couple. There's no way they're going to buy us as a fake couple. And then when you get them in the bedroom and he finishes so fast, she's just like, well, that seals it. He is not attracted to me. Oh my God, I'm going to go crawl in a hole and die now. So I just, it pokes at both of their wounds, right? It pokes at
Yeah.
both of their tender spots. This idea that, he has this reputation that he doesn't particularly like, that he knows he just let her down. And she thinks it's because he just was being polite. And that's, yeah. So that is a conversation. One thing I will say about Sara Whitney characters, they talk to each other. I do not like it when characters nurse grievances that don't get talked out really pretty quickly. So I always try to clear up those things. And even in this scene, they're gonna talk pretty fast.
Yeah, they talked it through. Well, this was sort of also, I'm going to read just a very short bit here that the transition between going from his head to her
Hmm.
head, which I thought was absolutely beautiful, and also not something that I've seen in the middle of an intimate moment
Hmm.
where we suddenly we change our perspective and we get into the other character's head. And I thought it was not only really well done, but also uh, the transition itself was very cool to sort of see, to go from him to her, particularly at this moment. So I think at this point, um, they've he's redeemed himself at this point, and she has an orgasm, and he's basically like saying, "Let's do this. Let's try it again. I bet I can make you come a second time." She's like, "That's never happened," and so she gives in and says, "Okay, we'll give it a shot." And we go from here. He kissed her once hard, thrilled by her small bit of bravery. I'm promising. Thea wasn't sure she was going to survive the night. Like, I should have set up no. She said no promises. I don't promise that I'm going to have another orgasm. And he's saying I'm promising. And then there's the flip. Thea wasn't sure she was going to survive the night. I was like, oh my God. Like, it was really like, I was like, this is so great. Particularly. So I'm curious, why did you decide to do that twist right there at that moment?
I, there have been too many scenes that I've read where I've thought, I would love to know what he's thinking. I would love to know what she is thinking. And I don't always do scenes like that where I flip in, that I go from his and then within the same scene to hers like that. That's rare for me. But in this case, because there was so much miscommunication and misunderstanding about what had happened, I really wanted a peek at her as well.
Okay.
So as opposed to picking up the next day or picking up with, fully clothed and sustaining themselves with carbs so they can go back again or whatever, that you actually pick up in that moment. So I just, because she had been so upset by the previous scene and by thinking that he just wanted to get it over with fast, out of pity or whatever, I felt like we needed to really see her right away so we could see that she was accepting that, okay, no, he really was into it and he really did, feel something, and that's why that happened. I needed to show people that she was okay too. I I I I am I like my characters. I don't want to make them
Yeah.
suffer. And so I wanted
Ah,
to make sure wanted to make sure readers would understand. And also I think it's important that they see she has had, it's not low self-esteem necessarily. She just has an understanding of him and their relationship that is different than what is happening in his head. And so now we've seen in his head his surprise at the rush of emotion he felt during this. I just felt it was important to see that she was coming around to it too, because she is so tentative in her interactions with him sometimes when it comes to sex and desire. And I just wanted everybody to know that Thea was going to be okay.
and speaking of this was such a gorgeous section. I loved this. Again, we're still in Thea's head now. Can we go again? He looked up at her. Give me another shot to impress you. So I think now she's at 2 orgasms at this
Mm-hmm.
point. We're at 2, yeah. No, say no. Because she'd been right. Aiden was magnificent, and saying goodbye to him at the end of their fake relationship was already going to suck. But if she let herself sleep with him a second time, let herself watch him come apart again while he was inside her body, well, she didn't know how she'd make it through that unscathed. Then he brushed his thumbs over her nipples and smiled at her with those eye crinkles that made her weak in the knees even before she'd known how good his tongue felt on all her swimsuit bits. And so all she could do was nod, too overwhelmed with everything that had happened on this magical bed to speak. Oh my God! Oh my God. This was like, without sort of like, never once was this, I was falling in love. Never once, like, but you just sort of got all of her feelings out about him in these 2 paragraphs without her ever saying like this is the man for me, like, but all of that came out in just these, I don't know, 10 sentences, if
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Really gorgeous writing.
thank you. Well, she's a realist. She knows that they have an end date, what they've agreed
Right.
to. And so I think, and maybe this is a reflection of something I do in my life too, setting realistic expectations. Like I can enjoy it to this point, but this is where it ends. Or, I'm concerned if I don't remember in the end, this is how it's going to be, that I'm going to give myself I'm going to build up something that I can't come through. So she's just trying to keep herself in check, and it doesn't work. Poor Thea. It doesn't work because he is so overwhelming. But
Now we're gonna get, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I do think, and another reason I wanted to show both of them is when it's the first sex like this, and for them, they've been kissing and that's been it, and it's been mostly kisses for show in the fake relationship. So I always, when couples have their first time together in fiction, I always want to see what both of them are thinking. And so this was just me having my cake and eating it too, right? We see him and how his reaction to that happened. And then I really wanted to see hers too. So I don't always do that in my books when it's the first time to get into both of their heads, but in this case there was the perfect opportunity to do it. And so it's something I would want to see. I always want to see, what does she think? What does he think? Or what does he think? What does he think? What does she think? Depending on your gender compilation there in your couple.
Given that you write, before you set out to write your book, the sex scene, the first sex scene, the first moment between them. What part of this was that first moment for you when you, like, what was the one where you knew this was going to happen? That, like, because there's a bit that I'm going to read here that is so like, get out your fans. And so, wow, cold water. Or was it the fumbling bit? Or was it, I'm very curious what came first.
It was the fumbling and the miscommunication that came first. It was him being in such a rush and so excited to finally be with her that he finishes so fast and leaves her thinking it's her and not him. That was what I wanted to do, because I knew I had a Playboy and I knew I had a woman who felt like she wasn't his type and he was just doing this for the sake of appearances, right?
Yeah.
So I knew I wanted that misdirected miscommunication. And then the back end of her section, there's a miscommunication that gets at his tender spot too. That is something that I added later. That's something that came as I was revising and editing. But I didn't know what was going to set up the impetus to find for them to finally have sex, but I just knew that I wanted that uh, him to be embarrassed that he finished so fast and then be horrified, like, oh my God, wait, no, she thinks this was her. Oh no, no. So I thought that would be lovely for both of them. So that is the moment that I knew I wanted to do. And then the lead up to that, all of that changed as I went along with the book, and it just kind of flowed. I added that little bit of he was worried that she was in danger. I don't want to say too much because I still want people to read,
Yeah.
but a little bit of that. Oh my God, what? Oh, I could have lost you. Like, okay, and that's what tips him over finally in the end.
Yeah. Okay, you guys get ready because this is like I'm probably gonna flame bright red as I'm reading this. So get ready, everyone. So amazing. She raised and lowered herself slowly, marveling at the hard heat of his cock, and Aidan let her set the pace at first. She luxuriated in the friction between them, bouncing and rocking and thrilling herself with the sounds their bodies made as they slapped together. With the oh, it's so good, so good, with the delicious sensation of being filled. But soon enough he asserted control, digging his fingers into her hips and dragging her down to grind against him. She moaned and arched her back, thrusting her breasts forward, and he surged upward to take one in his mouth, trapping her between a hand gripping the nape of her neck and his tongue torturing her nipple. She felt every point of contact between them as if they were fiery brands, searing her skin and stoking the tension coiling inside of her even higher. They were both gasping now. Aidan's mouth was hot against her breast, and he slammed up into her over and over, increasing the pace as her hips moved in a frantic circle as she chased her release. Yes, Aidan, please, please, she begged, unable to organize her words into any coherence. Okay, so this whole thing is so evocative. It's so like, I don't know. I feel like when I was reading it, to myself, before reading out loud, I felt like I was in the room with them, frankly. Like I was just like, there was there was feel, there was sound, there was sound. Sound is something that I think can be so overlooked. And I'm guilty of it. Like I read this, I was reading this and I was like, I need to go back over my work in progress and layer in some sound because this is really extra. Like now you've got all of the senses going here.
Well, and it's kind of like you said before, the sex can be kind of silly, kind of funny, and the sound thing is there are, if you just hear the audio, it would be like, oh yeah, no, that's, I'm not sure how sexy that is. But when you combine it all together, right, it's all just a piece of it. And I don't always highlight that in every scene, but in that case, it made sense for her to be kind of aware of everything that was happening. And that's another one where I had to do, like you said, an octopus check. How many hands does he have? Where are all of them? Is he gripping hips now? Is he gripping nape of neck? Like, what's he? Okay.
Yeah. Or is
Hand
that
check.
even physically possible? Can one reach here and be here? I don't really know. And then I just wanted to read the very, very end of the scene because again, I did think that this was so beautiful. It's like this gorgeous moment between them that like I don't know, like kind of made me like it was that okay, you're tucking me in moment where of comfort, of like warm feeling. I really love this. He dropped a quick kiss on her mouth that left her breathless, then gave a sharp whistle. Blue is her dog. Blue's head jerked up and she leapt to her feet with a little woof, then trotted to the bed. She hopped up, spun around 3 times, and curled around Thea's ankles with a contented sigh. My 2 ladies, that's more like it, he said, and Thea grinned to herself in the dark, knowing she was about to fall asleep next to the handsomest man she'd ever met. Oh my God. Like, first of all, I'm a sucker for a dog in a book.
Well, I mean, you got to make him a dog lover, right? He's got to be good with dogs. So,
God. So anyway, that moment I thought was absolutely gorgeous, and a gorgeous way to end this scene between the two of them, where there was so much miscommunication and so much fumbling and so much, and then they've really sort of come together now, and I'm going, this couple is going to go the distance.
But and I also love, and I kind of hope readers also do the, oh, they're so happy right now. Oh God, what's she gonna do to them? You
Yeah,
know,
that actually
because
just hit my head. Like, oh, she's gonna go therapy
because that's what
now?
romance does too. Anytime you get to that really happy place before that the final chapter, there's gonna be some shit coming down the pike that's gonna, so I liked the domesticity because he has been faking it
Yeah.
for business reasons, this I'm settled, I'm happy, and then to show him actually settled and happy, not having expected it, not having planned it, everything that happened wasn't orchestrated by anybody, it just unfolded organically. And so for him to end living out this fantasy that he's been trying to show the world and really liking it, and she just being like, this is so wonderful, I know this can't last, but look, this slice is so great right now, that then they have to navigate it the next morning, and there's more conversation, and that's
Well,
how it goes.
well, knowing that you've got to break them up, right? You've got to do something that's going to drive a wedge between them. How do you balance that sort of, because this book is funny. It's funny. It's fun. It's funny. It's a fun read. But then how do you balance that, the romance and the comedy elements, along with the angst that that you need to make the characters grow?
It is hard sometimes because I like to promise a lighter experience for
Hmm.
readers. So I'm never going to do, I don't think I will ever be somebody who writes dark. I'm not going to ever advertise a dark, gritty reading experience because that's just not what I lend myself to. And so because of that, the conflicts are going to be, it's not kidnapped by a mob boss. Bless up those books. I love reading them, but I can't, that's not what I write. And so it's
Right.
always going to be, I try to keep the conflicts very character driven, very built into their own personalities, flaws. Clashing goals is great. If I can make it so, what one character needs is in conflict with what the other character has been working toward, that's a great way to do it because it is organic. It's not something that is coming out of nowhere or over the top or out of context for the world that I've built. So it is going to be I need to do this, and I understand that it is in contrast to what you need from me. And so our breakup is, inevitable based on the circumstance, except I have to examine, is that a circumstance I actually need, and come
Mm.
around with personal change for that. So it's always going to be, hopefully with me, internal conflict meeting external conflict, but not anything that is upsetting, dramatic, traumatic, anything like that. The right amount of angst to make you get that little kind of worry in your stomach when you read a good romance, and it's like,
Mm.
oh no, are they gonna? I mean, I know they will, but I still feel really bad as I'm reading it. I want a little bit of that, but I try to keep everything really grounded in the world of the characters and in the world of their own reactions. But it's hard. Also,
Yeah.
I'm an inappropriate joker. I'm the person who is, when my husband and I fight, I have to kind of say to him, are we joking about this yet? Like, can I make the joke I want to make? Okay, okay, okay. So, I'm going to put that in my fight scenes also, that
Yeah.
they can be fighting, but they can also, somebody can throw a joke in and just be like, I can't help it. I have to. So that helps too, I think, to keep them true to their observant, witty natures of the characters that I write, to kind of throw that into.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I struggle with that. That just being okay with sort of like that internal conflict,
Mhm.
and letting that propel the story, right? Like I really struggle with that because I always want something big and dramatic.
So here's the thing, and I'm gonna call you on this. It's
Yeah.
because you also write urban fantasy, right?
Oh boy.
Most of my writer friends are urban fantasy and paranormal romance writers, and I'm the
Okay.
contemporary romance writer in the group. And so all of them have like epic dragon fights or demon army versus demon army. And I'm like, okay, my characters have been sitting on a couch for 4 chapters, and now they're having a disagreement because his job wants him to leave town. That is my conflict. And so I feel like you urban fantasy paranormal people, you have these huge epic stakes, and my stakes are so low in comparison in my books, but they're so high for the characters because
Right.
I feel like those are the stakes for so much of us every day. I love this person, but I don't know if I can make it work because of the way he manages money, or these things that they're big, but the stakes are not, I am the chosen one and I have to stop this marauding army of demons from hell. Like it's just such a different level. So
Right.
I'm able to adjust my stakes to be in my world and keep them really, really low on the scale of conflict from zero to apocalypse. But
Right.
in my world, it's so everything for these characters. But I love that the you people who plot those things, I don't know how you do it.
I don't know.
Finding magical powers and shifters, and like, God bless you.
Well, my romance has been contemporary. There are no although I'm looking forward to writing my first paranormal, but there are no sort of like, demons, world's end, dystopian, things. And so, but I'm writing rockstar romance. So I have to say this whole Harvey Weinstein thing has kind of been a gift,
Mhm.
because I'm like reading about his shenanigans and I was like, oh, Mossad, he brought Mossad in. Oh, yeah.
I can add danger.
I can add danger. That's it. Like, I was like, yes, I can add danger. That's awesome. Instead of just letting the characters be emotional and realizing that is enough. Like, that
Mhm.
is enough. That's a high enough. Those stakes are high enough.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think I just come a little more naturally to emotional stakes and recognizable life conflict that you or I might have in our own lives, elevated a little bit, blown out a little bit. In a romance world, of course, I don't have characters fighting over who's balancing the checkbook or anything like that. Challenge accepted. I wonder if I could do that. But yeah, I think I'm a little more comfortable with these very internal emotional twists and turns, and how that can come up against book two is an opposites attract book, and the final fight is about what is successful for this business they're building together. And his version of success, because he is an introvert and he doesn't like being in the public eye, is one thing, and she is a raging extrovert PR professional, and her version of success is very different. And so that's their final conflict, is just this: what I want to do for the business is not what you want to do for the business, and you want me to do this thing that I can't do, and if you that's all you want from me, we can't do this anymore. So it's that kind of thing that I love it when it comes, when you kind of see it coming. Even I love a
Yeah.
conflict that you're like, I see the iceberg up ahead and the Titanic is just headed to it, and they love each other, but is it going to be enough? That's the kind
Right.
of conflict that I think can work really well in my world anyway.
So, the Tempt Me series, what is the theme or through line that sort of weaves all these books together?
I'm so bad at seeing these things in my own writing. But what I read a review in one of my early books that jumped out at me, and I thought, yeah, this is my through line. It's it's characters who could be your friends in your
Yeah.
life finding love. And I throw tropes at them. I throw the opposites attract. I throw the stuck in a blizzard together with your friend turned enemy. It's things like that, but it's characters that you would want to spend time with. So it's delightful people finding love. That's honestly my
I
through
love it.
line, is just it's a warm comfort read of nice people who you'd want to hang out with, and you watch them pair off with each other, one couple at a time. That's the through line on that. It's tropes and delightful people and happy endings with a lot of steam.
I love it. Sarah, where can readers find you?
Oh, well, I am, if you go to my website, let's start with this,
Okay.
sarawhitney.com. It's SarawHitney. I have no H on the Sarah. Blame my mother. You can actually sign up for, if you sign up for my newsletter, I have a free story that I give away. It's a enemies to lovers short story. They have neighboring season ticket seats for the Chicago Cubs, and they hate each other, but they share an armrest. And so
Oh,
every scene is a different home game. And so we watch their relationship progress with game 2, and then game 6, and then game 13, and you kind of see how their enmity evolves, and there's so much banter and there's so much back and forth, and it's a fun little story. So if you go to my website, sarawhitney.com, you can sign up for my newsletter, and I will send you a copy of that right away. I'm on Facebook, Sara Whitney Author. Again, no H on Sarah. I have a reader group. It's Sarah's Sass Squad. As I say that out loud, I realize it almost sounds like Sarah's Sasquatch, and now I kind of want to change it to that. But it's Sass Squad, and that is, it's more low key, laid back memes, funny things, eye candy. I post some eye candy. on the
Nothing wrong
regular
with
too.
eye candy. Yeah. Ain't nothing wrong with eye candy.
I can't go wrong there. Instagram wise, you can find me at Sara Whitney, and I think I have an underscore at the end of Whitney there because, as it turns out, Sara Whitney is. There's a couple of us out there running around. We're gonna do battle one day for the Supreme Sara Whitney, but in the meantime, I have an underscore at the end of Whitney, and I'm also on Twitter. And I do a little bit of book talk there as well. But truly, my newsletter is the best way to find out about new releases and things like that. And Facebook is always good because I do post there, and I love hearing from readers, and I'd love it if you sign up and get Game On, my short story, and let me know what you think. And yeah.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for Tempting Lies or the whole Tempt Me series, which I am now going back and getting like
Oh,
every single
fabulous.
book because it's really fantastic. I really love reading it.
And it is the first three books are available in Kindle Unlimited, so you can purchase at Amazon. You can read for free if you are part of KU. Book four, Tempting Lies, when it comes out, it's going to be wide for a week,
Okay.
so people who are Barnes and Noble people or Kobo people or whoever can grab that. And then I'm gonna put it in KU, so you can wait an extra week after it's released, and it'll turn up in KU as well. And I need to get to work on book five because it's going to be good.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for doing this.
This was so fun. Thank you so much. I hope that all your conversations are good, and I can't wait to hear what other authors say inspires them and what their process is. I'm really excited to hear how other people do it. This is such a great idea for a
Oh, thank you.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll talk soon.
Okay, bye.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. Sign up to get email alerts when a new one goes live at elgreco.rocks. And don't forget to 5-star us on Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. See you next time.